Hi, everybody. Welcome to the HOPEcast. This is a podcast from Hope Church in Richmond, Virginia, and we are here to talk about faith and life together. And today I have my good friend, Pete Bowell. Pete and I have been close friends, colleagues, and we have worked together for over 25 years in this endeavor of Hope Church. We actually were on a same church staff for a few years before we started Hope Church in 1997. And the topic today is leadership and partnership and how those two things play out together. So, Pete, welcome. And
thanks, David.
Why don't you tee us up with some of your thoughts about leadership and partnership?
Well, I think the first thing that came to mind is we just talked about this recently. We didn't talk about this recently, but it was something that I thought about with this topic is, why would a partnership not work?
Ego, sin, brokenness, competition.
Yeah, all those kinds of things.
Any of that come to mind?
Well, probably does. And you saying that makes me think that it takes quite a bit of humility to work in a partnership. It takes being, it takes the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes. To say that this person wouldn't necessarily respond like I might want to have that response be. They respond in the way they respond. And you could argue it's rooted deeply in love. It's rooted deeply in, and when I think love, I'm thinking Paul's definition of love. It's patient, it's kind, it's long-suffering. And I think all of those things have been a mark of our partnership. And the long-suffering is we both have been through some very challenging times individually and with our families. And to stick with each other in that has just deepened the roots of the partnership.
You know, a lot of people talk about the idea of partnerships, working together in partnerships. There is sort of the biblical precedent that we have that Jesus sent the disciples out in pairs. And I think when we were in the earliest stages of considering whether we would throw our hats in the ring together, that precedent was, that really got our attention. Jesus seemed to send the disciples out in pairs. So that's significant. Working in pairs has lots of benefits, right? You can help each other. You can support each other. You can pray for each other. You can care for each other when things are frustrating, hard, challenging. And it also has challenges like you've talked about. We've had personal challenges in our lives over these 26 plus years. There have been times where we had to really kind of go deeper into conversation together when either I hurt or frustrated you, or perhaps vice versa. And we just said, we got to really try to talk about this. But people said to us early on, this could be great, or it could crash and burn. And I think a lot of people tell stories of partnerships that have sort of crashed and burned. And, we get that. We sort of talked about this a little bit. There's a lot of human mess that comes into play when you're trying to do a partnership. We jokingly say, but sort of only half jokingly, the way we have worked together over the years does have some resemblance of, let's call it marital dynamics. Meaning communicating with each other, trying to keep each other informed, asking each other, what do you think? Trying to generate and consider ideas together, stuff like that.
I like your sweater. It's part of marriage too, just to complimenting one another.
Thank you. I like my sweater too, but I hope you're not asking me for it because I really like this one.
I remember one time, I don't remember what it was. I think I had was not prepared for some more formal meeting, and I said, "Hey, David, can I run over to your house?" I went in the house, went up to your closet, grabbed one of your shirts.
I do remember.
That's a real partnership.
Nice picture
there.
Of partnership. Can I run over to your house and walk through your closet and pick out a shirt I need for this thing tonight? Sure, go for it.
Well, even thinking about that and joking about that a little bit makes me think that there's got to be humor in it too. We have got to be able to say, you know what, that was a mess up, or you hurt me, or I hurt you. But in the big picture, what really matters? What really matters? And can we later perhaps laugh about something like that. I've always appreciated when I have had conversations with you or you with me, and we've called those cleaning the pipes. What are some things that we need to talk about that just you want to get off your chest? Often you have kept a steady plane with it. I'm a little bit more up and down, but you're like, oh yeah, I should have thought about that. Mm-hmm. And that actually helps calm my spirit to think, yeah, I'm all worked up about this. And you're like, yeah, I blew it. Mm. Oh, thank you. Because I was looking for more reasons to be mad, but you didn't give me the opportunity. So thank you for that.
I think for various reasons, some of them will be hard for me to put my finger on. I think both of us in different ways were given pretty healthy relational models. And the idea of relational commitment, I think, has sort of been modeled for us. And even biblical verses that have been taught to us or brought to our attention that have been modeled for us. How about this? I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and this topic about a partnership came up.
Yeah.
If you could respond to this a little bit.
Sure.
You want to be different enough so that you are actually gaining the benefit of working together. Like there's an old sort of funny, sort of serious line about marriage, which is if you're both the same, one of you is not needed.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about a professional partnership, if you were both the same, you maybe are not getting the benefit of broadening our capabilities or our gifting, where you bring certain gifts that I don't have, I may bring certain gifts you don't have. So on the one hand, you want to be different. And then there's like enough, but like if you're so different, if we had diametrically opposed visions for what a church should be, this partnership wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So some people would be like, well, you want to work with somebody where you have a lot in common. Yes, but if you have so much in common, are we actually not gaining the benefit of a partnership? But if you have so much that's not in common, does it become impossible to do it?
Right.
Can you engage with that idea?
Yeah, I mean, what's coming to mind is core values. What is in the deepest place of you? I often will say to people, because when people look at us, they think, well, you guys are kind of different. I'm thinking, well, it's remarkable how much we're the same.
Yeah.
We have the same wiring to want to reach people. We talked about this the other day. We both have a little bit of a creative bent, kind of artist in that way.
We sort of have let's find a more creative, better way to do it.
Right. We both think we're the smartest person in the room. So
send that to the editing room, please.
Yeah. But really, I mean, at the core, we really want to make a difference, and I think too, the longer we've been doing this together, we both also want to keep equipping the next generation. Passing the baton in that way, and making sure, maybe making sure is not the right way to put it, but opening our hands to whatever the future might be. But the core value is the most important thing. It's in one sense what has really kept us together, that even though we've had some, let's call it even superficial differences, and what I mean by that is it's not really core stuff. Do you love God? Yeah, I love God. Do you love Jesus? Yeah. Do you love people? Yeah. But I don't like the way you said this. Mm-hmm. That's not core.
Right.
So it's the core things that has kept us, I think, together. And it also makes me think that there's something about persevering. Love is patient. It is long-suffering. It perseveres.
It always hopes. It always perseveres. I think those are the words.
I think that there are folks that give it a year, give it 3 years, and think, I need to go a different way. Mm-hmm. I think we've stuck with it long enough that that's a part of the DNA of it as well. Sometimes you have to to have to really do the hard work. That's probably the hardest work, is working through the differences to stick together.
Yeah. And I appreciate your sense of, with that comes a sense of longevity. Like the idea of sticking together is not just 6 months. I mean, I think in an unspoken way, we sort of always had a sense that we're going to do our very best to be committed to this for quite a while. And I think that relationships that are able to stay together in a commitment over a long period of time, they become a kind of foundational thing upon which other things can be built.
Yeah.
So I think we've always had this little sense of, we've always sort of seen that we're going to be committed to this for a long time. This whole idea of similar but different, in the early days when we were talking about the idea of planning a church together, I remember having very transparent conversations like, what would you dream for a church to be like? What would it look like? How would it feel? What would the culture be? And we were so similar on those types of things. So we do have different personalities and different gifts. I think people at Hope who know us reasonably well or who observe could say, yes, I see the differences. But let's talk about that for a minute, because I think there's two sides to that coin. I'm just going to make gross generalizations. I think people will look at us and say, okay, David's a thinker, Pete's a feeler. They're going to say Pete's an extrovert, David's an introvert. To a degree, those things are true. But what you and I know about each other is you have a lot more introvert in you than most people know. You're frequently looking to find a quiet place to take a break and get a rest. And you and I talk about this a bit. I don't know how much other people hear that. I have a lot more extrovert than a lot of people know. I'm happy to walk into a room and meet people and hear their story and all that kind of stuff. Then on the thinking, feeling thing, you have so many important, thoughtful leadership insights that we talk about a lot. And I don't know that enough people know that, and they need to know that. I also think you would say, I feel things deeply. I may feel them, let's say, a little more internally, where you may feel them a little bit closer to where people can see them. But I think we both think pretty deeply about stuff. Yeah. We frequently have conversations of sharing insights that are really encouraging. And I think we both feel pretty deeply about things. We might express that in slightly different ways.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting that you said you see a lot of ways we're similar, and I agree with that. Probably the average onlooker would talk about ways that they see us being different. We even laugh about this, right? We even laugh about, if you're in a really close partnership, you know these kind of things. Pete and I wear the same shirt size. We wear the same pants size. And we've done a lot of life. We've traveled together. You get into, like, hey, I need to borrow a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Our clothes fit each other.
Yes.
So
would you like to share briefly the story of me kind of mocking you on one of the first trips we took? You brought a certain kind of a suitcase, and then a few years later, I brought that suitcase, and our executive pastor, Wes Peterson, was wondering what was that all about. I think it had to do something with a brown paper bag. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, right, of course.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to pack in, I don't know if I would do this on an international trip, but if it's like a little local trip, my favorite thing to pack in is a brown paper grocery bag.
Right.
I mean, doesn't everybody do that?
Sure.
Because you fit a pair of size 12 shoes on the bottom when you put them in, heel to toe to heel. And then you put your toilet kit on top of that.
Right.
And then you just layer a couple shirts and stuff. Yeah. It's like perfect. You pick up the paper bag, you're ready to go.
Yeah. So we go to West Virginia at one point, and I'm remembering that. And I thought I would poke at our new friend, Wes Peterson, a little bit. And I decided to poke him by bringing a paper bag. It was a double paper bag. And Wes is pretty organized, and he has certain kind of suitcases he like. He said, what's that? That's my suitcase.
Right.
David was a model of that. Right. And I remember ripping when I took it out of the back of the car. And I said, that's okay. I can get another suitcase. I'll just go right over here into the store.
You can get them free at the grocery store.
Yeah, they work well.
Which is awesome.
I think we got off topic there. I don't even remember what we were talking about, which is part of my personality.
More information than people want. My wife doesn't like it when I do that.
Yeah.
She's like, please, like we're going to go for a weekend with some friends. She's like, please don't pack in a
Okay,
paper
so you
bag.
mentioned wife there for a moment.
Please pack in a normal person suitcase.
Right, but you just mentioned wife, and it reminded me of something I wanted to say related to the longevity of the partnership. It's not what everybody has, but I think our wives have done a great job of continuing to encourage us in our own relationships. They get together, but also they encourage us for one another.
Yeah.
Meg is saying, should we get with the Dwight? Should we have a dinner with the Dwight? Should we? And that kind of connection is helpful as well. That's not always true in some people's partnerships, some people's leadership, that they maybe if I were to apply this for those out there in the business world or the work world thinking about their own partnerships, you need someone to encourage you in that partnership too. Mm-hmm. Somebody, a friend that sees the value that maybe you don't see because of some of the differences.
We've been incredibly fortunate. We have a lot of compatibility, and part of what I mean by compatibility is a shared view of commitment to relationships, which is a really important compatibility, a very important shared idea for the times when you're not feeling terribly compatible.
Yeah.
If you both share that conviction, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
But probably a lot of people have thought about this. You know, lots of times where you have two couples and they're friends, it's not always a given. When you got two couples that are friends, you got four people in this relational circle. It's not always a given that all of them will get along well with all of them. Right. A typical scenario in couples is the husbands get along great and the wives, maybe it's just not as much positive chemistry.
Right.
Or the wives get along great and the husbands, maybe not as much positive chemistry.
Yeah.
We're super fortunate that among the four of us, we enjoy a positive chemistry all around the circle.
Right.
Maybe people know, but I think a lot of people may not know how important Meg Bowell and Elizabeth Dwight are in the story of Hope Church and its founding and its development and growth over the years.
Yes.
Their commitment, their all in, their encouragement, their stability, their strong foundation and vision is a huge part of encouraging us. And I also think there's nuance to the way they do their relationship.
Right.
Because it's got connect the dots, sort of complex connections to the life of Hope Church and to you and me as colleagues and stuff like that.
Well, and our children are fairly close in age, so there's some of that commonality.
Right.
I particularly when I encourage my wife to listen to this podcast, because we built her up and we built Liz up. And I think that's important that they know that we have included them in this partnership as well.
So good news. We'll probably have 2 listeners.
Yeah.
That's a good start. That's a good start. What do you want to say about leadership, the life of leadership? What comes with leadership? And to what degree do you have any partnership implications? Like I think we've been talking about partnership in the realm of leadership. Now let's talk about leadership. What comes with it? And what are the associated connections that partnership brings?
Yeah, I think to really lead people well, especially in our culture today, people need to know that you care about them. Mm-hmm. It's not just about your leading them to your vision, that you care about them. You care deeply about the vision, and you are inviting them into it. So from my chair, I love to develop a relationship, get to know that person a little bit, let them know that I care about them beyond whatever it is we're going after together. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is servant kind of leadership. That's not always easy. Sometimes it takes sacrifice. But I think you need to help those that are under your employ to know that they really matter. They're a human being, first of all,
right?
More than a gift set. They're a human being, first of all, and I think that's something that I think about a lot. When they're different from me, when they irritate me, I think I try to always get the benefit of the doubt. What's going on in their day? Now, there's times when you just have to go after it. You just have to keep working hard together. But it's so important that you take a moment just to make that personal connection. Again, especially in our culture today and in this generation. I've heard recently, I think on another podcast, that the pandemic of our day is loneliness. Mm-hmm. And people bring all of that stuff into the work relationship. So, you can only go so far sometimes depending on your work relationship or the kind of place that you work in that area. But I think it goes a long way. I've also been very discipled, mentored in a way that it's very much doing things together, phases of leadership kind of stuff. I do it, you watch me, you do it, I'm with you, you do it, I'm in the background, and you do it all alone. I very intentionally in leadership think how can I equip this person to, in a sense, replace me? So that may be a little far afield of what you're exactly asking, but those are some leadership principles that it first starts with a relationship, and then it starts with some intentionality to give them ownership of what you're asking them to lead. David, you mentioned earlier in the podcast our differences. And that some people might think that, you are more the thinker, I'm more the feeler. You were very kind to say that there are times when I have some good leadership insights, but I've seen your great pastoral heart for people, but also for me. And you've helped me to grow in Christ. And there are probably many examples I could give. I believe that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. Mm. And there are many a times when you read a book that means a lot to you that you pass on to me, and I think, wow, that's significant, and that's helped me to grow in Christ. There's times when we come into our meetings, and I think where we are in this ministry now, we don't need to talk so much about the details. We have a very gifted staff that can do some of those things. Mm-hmm. But you say, let's just spend some time in prayer. Let's open the Word. And I remember a recent time, we probably ended up spontaneously praying for 30, 40 minutes. And coming out of it, I think I said, I don't think we have anything to talk about. I think the things that were worrying me, the things that I wonder about, it really has shrunk. In the midst of it. You've always been encouraging to me by understanding me, by listening to others in a room, and then you smiling across the room because you think, yeah, I know what Pete's thinking here. And it's true. And you'll help. You give me voice. You encourage my gifts, and that encouraged me in Christ, because we're God's workmanship. And when we can encourage one another's gifts, that draws us closer to Christ. So, you have, in the midst of this conversation on partnership and leadership, one of the core issues is how have we pointed one another to Christ? And that's been important to me. So thank you for that.
All mutual. Again, I just keep thinking, I don't know, I use this word a lot, and I think I use it more and more.
Yeah.
It's a combination of two words, really. We're fortunate. We're just very, very fortunate. And it's a privilege. I don't think you and I are two particularly virtuous people, like in ways that other people aren't. We're fortunate. We do have shared vision. We do have compatibility. I also think the piece, or the way I would say it is, there's an unspoken sense where over 26 years of working in a close relationship, we've always been for one another. For one another's well-being, our intentions toward each other are for one another. And that's a big thing. And so I think of you will frequently say to me, I was reading in X book of the Bible. You just name it. I was reading in Psalms yesterday. I was reading in Mark yesterday. I was reading in Philippians yesterday. I was reading in Genesis yesterday. You will frequently, whether you know it or not, I can record in my memory that frequently conversations together, you're starting with that. I was reading in such and such yesterday. So over the years, I'm like, Pete is in the scriptures a lot and really paying attention to them. I can call to mind specific times where you'll say, you know what, I was reading in Psalm, I'll give a specific one. I think it's Psalm 73. I was reading in Psalm 73, and Psalm 73 says, I was a brute beast before you until I entered the sanctuary of God.
Yeah.
And we would talk about, like, what does he mean when he says he was a brute beast? It just means I was so agitated, so frustrated, so upset that my perspective had gotten distorted. And until I entered the sanctuary, I remember you basically taught, it was like you giving me a little Bible study. I remember this a number of years ago. And I remember it so well. Until I entered the sanctuary. And then you were like, so what happens when you enter the sanctuary? Your eyes are lifted. Your perspective is lifted. It's moved from yourself and everything that's inside churning up to God, and proper perspective is restored.
Yeah.
And then internally, proper alignment gets restored. How does that happen? When I entered the sanctuary and I lifted my attention to God. When we're really agitated, I don't know if I could say this for everybody, but I think for me sometimes when you're really agitated, part of being really agitated is that there's a part of you that wants to keep fomenting the agitation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so frustrated about this. And then you want to keep pounding on the frustration.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just makes it worse. Something has to break you out of that cycle. And that's where I think the Psalm says, until I entered the sanctuary.
Yes.
That's one of many, many examples I can think of. You're also a journaler. I'm a very inconsistent, try it, resolve to get good at it again, with about 20 journals somewhere in my house that have about 4 pages written in them that were a new resolution this time. That just didn't happen. You're a really diligent journaler. You will frequently say, I was journaling this morning. And I admire that. When I can journal, which is sporadic, there is a benefit to writing thoughts and writing prayers that grounds you in a way that's different than if I just sort of speak them.
Yeah.
So what's coming to mind for me is Ecclesiastes. 2 are better than 1, for they have a good return for their labor. And woe to the one who is alone, who falls down, who will help them up. And 2 can keep each other warm, but one alone, right? So this is how it's written in, I think it's Ecclesiastes 3. And so we've just been really, really fortunate. And I think we have sort of said, hey, Jesus sent them out in 2s. And that's a really important paradigm to try to do it. I think about church planters who are solo.
Yeah.
Church planting's hard. And we had the encouragement of working together and sort of encouraging each other, holding each other up and all that. I think if I look back on it, it would be harder to do it.
And I think the secret sauce, one of the secret sauces of any church, but of Hope particularly, is that it's a partnership. Mm-hmm. That it's 2s, and I think that's really has been an important piece of the longevity and the place that we find ourselves in. You mentioned journaling. I appreciate that. I do appreciate journaling, but another way I could say it to you is, I was trying to stay focused this morning So I was writing in my journal again. You are very focused, and you're able to keep that train of thought. And I don't know if I've seen many people that can look at God's word and then right there on the spot begin to articulate it or do some exegesis off the top of your head. I have to work really hard at that, and I think that that's such a gift to be able to do. So yeah, I journal. I enjoy journaling. It's helped me to be a better writer over the years, but at the same time, it's part of my weakness too. It's a way that I can keep focused in prayer. Otherwise, my son said, you ought to go out and take a walk and just do prayer walks. I can hardly do it. I'd be so distracted by so many squirrels and birds that I would never be able to
no
focus.
Monkeys around.
Yeah.
It'd be like all the mind monkeys.
One last thing. I don't know if this is your podcast or my podcast, but one last thing. You said, where two are together is better than one, and when one falls, the other can pick them up. But I'm so mindful of what else Ecclesiastes says, which is, and a cord of three strings are strong. What is it? A cord
of three strands is not
easily broken. And most commentators say that's the presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Spirit of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the secret? We've said a lot in this podcast. Christ in the center. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that's the third, not the third place, but the one that has kept us together. So
helpful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody, on the HOPEcast today. We're grateful to have this opportunity for the conversation. We hope it might have been helpful to you. And you can find the HOPEcast on all the normal podcasting outlets like Spotify and Apple and YouTube. You can find these podcasts there. If you want to know more about Hope Church in Richmond, Virginia, check us out on www.hopechurchrva.com.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.